The teacher ran away with her son from her tyrant millionaire husband to a village. When she found out who her new neighbor was, she couldn't believe her eyes. Through the noise that reigned during the break, the bell rang for the lesson. The students rushed to their classrooms to avoid being late for the start of class. This was Senior Nejuo's private school. Only the wealthiest residents of the city could afford to send their children here. The leather furniture in the foyer and the expensive office equipment in every classroom were clear evidence of this. Amanda had a lesson with the 7th grade. She leisurely got up from the table, took her textbooks and notebooks, and left the teacher's lounge. Gonzalez is probably not prepared for the lesson today. And Silva will again try to read the text in his broken French, she thought as she headed to the classroom. Amanda Gennaro was a French language teacher. She looked about 30 years old. She wore a beautiful powder-colored dress that suited her well and highlighted her finely shaped feminine figure. Her luxurious chestnut hair was neatly styled according to the dress code. Her well-groomed appearance suggested that she did not lack for money. Entering the classroom, she first inspected all those present. No student escaped the sharp eye of the teacher, and if necessary, she made remarks. The children watched her with curiosity. Amanda was a very attractive woman and an excellent teacher, which the students greatly appreciated. "Senora Gennaro, what will we be doing today?" asked the same Gonzalez, a red-haired 12-year-old boy sitting at the back desk. "You must be thoroughly prepared for the lesson today, asking such questions," she replied playfully. Gonzalez lowered his head because, as the teacher had guessed, he was not prepared for the lesson. "Today we will be talking about how to save the Amazon forests." "Please share your thoughts in French," Amanda said, listening with interest to her students' arguments. The school day was drawing to a close, and students, along with teachers, began to leave the school. Amanda stepped out of the building and paused. She was in no hurry to go home. She wanted to take a walk, and a few minutes later, she was already heading to the central part of the city. Narrow streets filled with numerous shops adorned with advertisements led here. This was the historical part of the city, where the local landmarks were located. Here one could visit museums, stop by a restaurant, or attend a mass in one of the churches. This was where Amanda was headed. A service was in full swing at the St. Benedict Cathedral. The church, built in the neo-Gothic style, was impressive in its height. She sat in the last row and took a prayer book. After the service, she decided to walk around the church to get a better look at it. She was not often here, so she wanted to stay longer in a place where she finally felt peace and serenity. "Senora, do you need any help?" a stranger's voice sounded behind her. Amanda turned around and saw a priest. "No, I just wanted to take a closer look at the church's decor. I don't come here often." The priest blessed her and left so as not to disturb her. She stayed in the church for a while, lost in her thoughts. "Senora, your husband is already home," the maid informed her when Amanda entered her mansion. The spacious, bright hallway was empty, and she hurried upstairs to her room. "Darling, where are you rushing to?" Rogelio stepped out of his office to meet Amanda. He was already in his home clothes and waiting for her. He appeared slightly older than his wife, with dark hair and equally attractive looks. He owned a television company that produced famous series. It was a very profitable business, which had allowed him to amass a considerable fortune. "I'll change and come down to you," she said and hurried to her room. She had no desire to explain herself to her husband. Truth be told, lately, all they did was argue. Their family life was not going well. Yet, it had all started so beautifully, their meeting in a restaurant, romantic courtship, expensive gifts, and long walks through the night city. A few minutes later, she was already sitting in her husband's office in a soft armchair with burgundy velvet upholstery. "Amanda, maybe you shouldn't work? We are a wealthy family, and you don't need to spend so much time at school," Rogelio began the conversation. "I didn't get an education to waste away at home," Amanda said firmly. "But we have a son. You could fully devote yourself to his upbringing," her husband continued to insist. He stood by his desk, shuffling some papers and talking to his wife as if in passing. "I give our son enough attention," she replied just as firmly. And she immediately caught herself thinking that there was no trace of the former softness in her voice. "You don't understand. This is not a request. This is an order," Rogelio said more assertively. He put the papers aside and focused entirely on the conversation. "Since when have you started treating me like your subordinate? I am a free person, capable of making my own decisions. All our friends' wives take care of the house, the children, and visit beauty salons. Why don't you become like them?" "A brainless hen," the woman added. At these words, her husband rushed to his wife. He grabbed her by the chin and looked intently into her face. God, how rude he is. "He doesn't love me at all," Amanda thought, looking at Rogelio. "Who do you think you are? As if you're an outstanding teacher and the school can't live a day without you," he said sarcastically. "You're hurting me," she said in a steely voice. "I couldn't care less. You will do as I say." Amanda didn't respond to his words to end this unpleasant conversation for both. She felt deep disappointment at that moment. So many years had been spent building strong family relationships. But now they seemed to be dissolving, disappearing into nothingness. She removed his hand and left the office. "I have decided," Rogelio Gennaro echoed behind her. The five-star Hotel Buona Vita was situated on the shore of the blue ocean. Each room had its own unique decor with antiques and paintings. The king-size beds, pristine bathrooms, and breathtaking views made these rooms even more appealing. Rogelio lay on the white bed in a terry robe. He had just come out of the bathroom and was in a relaxed state. A few minutes later, a dark-skinned brunette emerged from the same place. She was completely naked. "You are my Aphrodite," the man said with longing and beckoned her with his finger. The woman didn't make him wait long and, in an instant, was lying next to him on the luxurious bed. "I forget about everything with you," Rogelio said, looking into her eyes. "But you continue to live with your wife," the naked beauty said resentfully. "But I only think of you, Lucia. My joy, you bring me so much pleasure." Rogelio gently ran his hand over her beautiful body. The brunette softened a bit after these words. "And what about your wife, Amanda? Isn't she able to satisfy your desires?" "Let's leave my wife out of this," Rogelio tried to end the conversation. "Or maybe she's pleasing someone else since you spend time with me. I told you to stop talking about this," Rogelio shouted. Lucia, realizing she had crossed the line, began to soothe her lover with caresses. Rogelio spent the whole day with her. Meanwhile, Amanda was engrossed in her French lessons and spent the entire day at school. After her lessons, she found herself back in the same cathedral where she had attended Mass the day before. There was no service today, so she just sat in the last row and reflected. She had been married to a wealthy man for 7 years, and they had a lovely 5-year-old son. Initially, everything was fine: a loving husband, a wanted child. Amanda did a lot to build their family happiness. She always supported her husband, loved him sincerely, and did everything to please him. But somehow, everything was starting to fall apart now. She didn't know how to save it. Tears quietly rolled down her cheeks, and her gaze was utterly empty. People often come to church when they fear losing something or are searching for answers to worldly questions. A priest sat down next to her. "You are right, Father. I can't find answers to the questions I keep asking myself. That's why I am here." "What troubles you?" "I feel like my marriage is falling apart, like the ground is slipping from under my feet. But I still love my husband and adore my little Jorge. Maybe I've done something wrong before God. Maybe I committed actions for which the Lord is punishing me now. We all make mistakes and sins, my daughter. But the most important thing is to recognize them and strive for correction. God is ready to forgive us all if we sincerely repent. May God bless you and help you find peace and serenity in your heart. Always remember, you are not alone. God is always with you." "Thank you, Father," The woman sincerely thanked the priest. She finally heard words that gave her confidence that everything could still be fixed. The next morning, as Amanda was having breakfast in the dining room, her husband entered. "Dear, you look wonderful today." Rogelio was in a good mood and decided to compliment her. She looked at him questioningly. "What's with you, Rogelio? Are you all right?" Amanda was an attractive woman, but her husband rarely said nice things to her lately. "What's bothering you?" Rogelio began to get angry. He was not dressed, which greatly surprised Amanda. Mom, Dad, little Jorge was already coming down the stairs to the dining room. He was still in his pajamas and hurried to see his parents. He was a spitting image of Rogelio, a dark-haired and swarthy boy. "Jorge, why are you up so early?" Amanda asked him. "I wanted to see you before you left." "But we'll be back, son," Amanda said gently, hugging him. "Are you going?" Amanda turned to her husband. "No. Later. Velasquez will take you to school. And don't forget, we're invited to a social event tonight. I'll pick you up at 7. This time, no excuses." The luxurious hall exuded an atmosphere of wealth and sophistication. The polished floors gleamed in the bright light. Gold chandeliers hanging from the ceiling scattered their rays throughout the hall. There were many people present. Some were arriving, while others were already pleasantly chatting with acquaintances. Trays with exquisite appetizers were on the tables. Waiters in white jackets with lapels weaved between guests, offering a selection of fine wines. Rogelio and Amanda entered the hall. He was in a black tailcoat, and she was in a long silk dress. "Glad to see you." The host, one of the local millionaires, Jose Ferrero, courteously bowed to the guests. "What a delightful atmosphere you have here, Mr. Ferrero." "Everything is top-notch," Rogelio said flatteringly. "Please, join the guests." The host politely directed them to the center of the hall, as he needed to greet another couple. Unexpectedly, they ran into Lucia, the very same woman Rogelio had met at the hotel a couple of days ago. She was Amanda's friend. A rather close one. They had met in school and had been together ever since. Amanda was serious and proper in every way, while Lucia was frivolous and fickle. But their different temperaments and characters never hindered their friendship. On the contrary, Amanda reigned in her friend's uncontrollable temperament, while Lucia helped her take life's troubles more lightly. "Lucia, I didn't expect to see you here," Amanda said in surprise. "I didn't expect it either." "You usually avoid such events," Lucia replied, equally surprised. "Yes, Rogelio was insistent today," Amanda tried to justify herself. She didn't like social events and preferred the cozy atmosphere of home. Rogelio felt a sense of awkwardness and tried to lead his wife to the other end of the hall. The evening seemed very dull to Amanda. She sat on a small couch, watching others fake smiles and give insincere compliments. Finally, she got bored and decided to ask Rogelio to take her home. But where was he? Amanda walked around the hall but couldn't find him. So she decided to step out onto the balcony to get some fresh air. Imagine her surprise when she saw her husband there, but not alone. He was in Lucia's arms. They were kissing passionately, oblivious to anyone around them. "Rogelio?" "Lucia," she said in astonishment. At that moment, Rogelio jumped away from Lucia as if scalded. "Darling, you misunderstood," he tried to explain. "Don't apologize to her, Rogelio. Do you think she's a saint?" "No, my dear, you're mistaken," Lucia said with dignity. "Shut up," Rogelio interrupted her. "You understood correctly, Amanda. Rogelio and I are lovers," Lucia continued relentlessly. She realized this was her chance to finally secure her friend's wealthy husband. Amanda approached Rogelio and slapped him. He responded with a slap of his own. Taken by surprise, she fell. "Don't you dare, do you hear me? Don't you dare raise your hand at me," Rogelio hissed, leaning over her. Amanda quickly got up from the floor and looked at the pair with contempt. Rogelio took Lucia by the arm, and they returned to the hall. Amanda hadn't expected such a blow from fate. Her husband and childhood friend, lovers. How could this be? She was in complete turmoil, and a grudge was brewing inside her. Amanda was returning home in a taxi. Numb from everything she had seen, she had run out of the mansion and caught the first car she saw. Sitting in the back seat, she rode in silence, lost in her thoughts. Amanda never expected such a blow from the two closest people in her life. Rogelio, her beloved husband, in the arms of her closest friend. And Lucia? She knew how hard Amanda was trying to preserve her marriage and bring back the former tenderness. Why did she do this? Could it be possible? At home, she locked herself in her room and cried into her pillow so no one could hear her. Despite all the family troubles, she still loved her Rogelio, who turned out to be a scoundrel. What happened to you, Sonora Amanda? The principal pointed to the red mark on the teacher's face. I fell, she muttered, not having time to come up with something more plausible. Were you drunk? The principal suggested. Someone behind the principal giggled, and she turned around. Silence fell. Come to my office, Paula said, leading the way. Amanda followed her. The principal sat at her desk and pointed to a seat opposite her. She looked at Amanda, so young, beautiful, and neat in every way. Paula felt sorry for her. She suddenly softened and felt ashamed of her words. Amanda, what happened to you? She began the conversation in a gentler tone. Family matters. It happens, the young woman replied calmly. And does it happen often? Not often. The principal began to scrutinize her eyes, searching for any answer. But Amanda's green eyes were empty, as if someone had forcibly ripped the life out of them. And the woman realized it was serious. That day Amanda returned home late in the evening. Where have you been? Rogelio met her in the hall. Doesn't matter, she replied, starting to climb the stairs. Rogelio stopped her and dragged her to his office. Did you forget our conversation? You're quitting your job and focusing on the family, Rogelio shouted. Are you mocking me? After everything I saw? Amanda responded calmly. This only infuriated him more. Did you forget who you are? A pathetic teacher living off her rich husband. I don't need anything from you. I can support myself. You won't last a day without me. I'm telling you again, you quit your job and stay home. Not a chance, Amanda said and headed for the door. Rogelio grabbed her from behind and threw her to the floor. He kicked her furiously. Amanda tried to shield her face with her hands, but it was in vain. The kicks pierced her body with sharp pain. Amanda didn't utter a sound. Finally, when Rogelio finished, she managed to get up. Blood trickled from her nose. She covered it with her hand and whispered, "Why?" Rogelio stood next to her, his eyes filled with rage. Amanda slowly left the office. Rogelio stayed behind. All this time, little Jorge slept peacefully in his room, unaware of what was happening between his parents. It was already late evening. Amanda didn't go upstairs, but left the house as she was and ran with all her might. She ran for a long time, not looking back, despite the pain. She only stopped when the residential area was out of sight. Why? She screamed at the top of her lungs. The terrible sound scattered birds from the trees, which she couldn't see. The birds' cries brought her back to her senses. Amanda looked around. Seeing no one, she threw herself to the ground and cried in despair. It seemed no one in the world could be more miserable than her. Meanwhile, Rogelio sat at his desk, shuffling through some papers. He stayed in his office to sleep. Amanda, regaining some composure, returned home. She had nowhere else to go. And her little son remained in the house. Amanda approached the mirror with fear the next morning. Her nose was swollen and had turned a purplish color. There were bruises under her eyes that couldn't be covered up by any means. No, this can't go on any longer, she said to herself. It sounded so determined that there was no doubt that this moment would change her entire life. And it wasn't resentment, nor hatred for the person she had lived with for so many years that was speaking. It was her sense of self-worth and her desire to correct her mistakes. At that moment, she began frantically searching the room. Amanda looked under the bed, opened all the cupboards in a row, pausing only for a moment to continue her search. Yes, where could it be? She muttered to herself and continued searching. Found it, she exclaimed, as if she had discovered a treasure trove of jewels. In reality, it was much simpler. She had found a large suitcase they used for trips with Rogelio. Amanda sat on the edge of the bed and began to stare at it intently. It was a dark blue wheeled travel bag. She started recalling moments associated with their trips, but nothing came to mind. This only proved that the decision she made just minutes ago was the only correct one. While her husband was at work, she packed the bag, took her son, first documenting her injuries at the hospital, and left. Geriakura, that was the name of the place Amanda arrived at with her son. It was chosen completely at random. She liked the name. There were no relatives or acquaintances here. Mom, why did we come here? You said we were going on an interesting trip. And I'm so tired. When will the fun begin? And why are we without Dad? Asked little Jorge. Be patient, sweetheart. Everything will come. Dad has a lot of work, so he couldn't come with us, Amanda replied, gently ruffling his hair. Amanda and Jorge got off the bus. After 6 hours of travel, everything was stiff, and they wanted to stretch a bit. Senora, would you like a ride somewhere? A smiling man, presumably a local, approached the strangers. Are there any houses or apartments for rent in your village? Amanda asked. There are. Are you staying long? I haven't seen you here before, the villager inquired. As long as it takes, the woman grumbled, and the man understood that she wasn't in the mood for conversation. Hop in the back seat. Geriakura was a fishing village right on the ocean shore. The entire economy was built on trading fish for other goods or money. The place was secluded. Rarely did anyone visit, although the locals were quite sociable and welcomed every new face. That's why the man at the bus stop was so happy to see Amanda and her son. After about 10 minutes, he stopped his pickup truck near one of the huts. It was a small wooden structure with a couple of windows and a thatched roof. Do you like it? The man asked cheerfully. Yes, Amanda replied and went inside. The household items were very modest, a wooden bed, a table, and a couple of chairs. Who lived here? She asked the guide. An old lady. After she passed away, the villagers took her simple belongings. And the hut remained. Amanda stood in the middle of the humble abode, looking around. Jorge was utterly confused. Where were the promised entertainments and when would they begin? The guide was also watching her closely. He noticed her carefully concealed bruises on her face, even though she was wearing dark glasses. It's none of my business, he thought. Well, I'll be off then, the man said and left the hut. Sweetheart, are you very tired? Amanda asked her son. Not really. Then I suggest we take a walk along the shore. On the ocean shore, there were unusually white sands and a deserted beach. Only the fishermen in their boats far away were casting nets to catch fish. How about a race? Who gets to the water first? Amanda shouted playfully. Her mood instantly caught on with the boy, and they dashed to the ocean in their clothes. Mom, I'm first. Jorge shouted gleefully as he beat Amanda to the water. The woman watched him frolic and splash in the emerald ocean, and suddenly, she felt so light. She unexpectedly felt free. Although she still had to figure out from what or whom. I'm coming to you, she shouted and dove into the green depths. They splashed and played for a long time, perhaps as they had never done in their entire conscious lives. Rogelio's house was in complete chaos. He didn't find his wife or son when he returned home in the evening. The servants couldn't answer his numerous questions. Where the hell are my wife and son? They left this morning, replied the maid. Where to? We don't know. After hearing this, he dashed upstairs to the bedroom. Rogelio opened the wardrobe and noticed some of Amanda's clothes were missing. Did they take a suitcase with them? He shouted to the maid. Yes, a blue travel bag. He then rushed to his son's room. Almost nothing had changed there either, except for the wardrobe's contents. They've run away, Rogelio hissed. He took out his phone and started dialing his wife. A ringtone sounded from the neighboring room. Amanda had thoughtfully left her phone behind to avoid being tracked. I'll find you anyway. I won't let you get away from me that easily, Rogelio gritted through his teeth. He hadn't anticipated such a turn of events and felt helpless and very lonely at that moment. Meanwhile, Amanda was lying on a wooden bed next to her son. She had brought some bedding to cover the uncomfortable wooden bed. Jorge had fallen asleep almost immediately after playing in the water. Left alone with her thoughts, Amanda began to ponder what she would do in this new, unfamiliar life. Is there a school in this village? Will I be able to continue my teaching career? Although French lessons are unlikely to be needed in this remote place, she thought, staring into the darkness. Oh, how could I forget? She almost exclaimed, but caught herself, almost waking her son. Jorge didn't wake up. She quickly jumped out of bed and began searching through her travel bag. Finally, at the very bottom, she found a few sheets of paper and some colored pencils she had taken for Jorge. The woman was very excited. In the dark, she found a lamp and lit it. Amanda sat at the table and took a black pencil in her hand. She thought for a moment, but then began to work, drawing something on the white sheet of paper. She looked very focused. She repeatedly picked up the paper and examined it from all angles. By morning, she had finished a sketch of the beach where they had so much fun with Jorge. I think it turned out quite well. But I need time to restore my knowledge and skills, she thought as she lay down next to her son. The sun was almost up, and Amanda decided to get some sleep before Jorge woke up. The sun was nearly at its zenith when Amanda opened her eyes. It was almost noon. She jumped out of bed, not finding her son beside her. She stepped out of the hut and saw Jorge talking to their guide from yesterday. Good afternoon, she said as she approached them. You sleep long, Sonora, the man said disapprovingly. Yes, there's a calming atmosphere here. The man softened a bit and replied, I brought some food. For the time being. Next to him was a basket covered with some cloth. The woman uncovered it and found eggs, a bit of milk, some vegetables, and bread. Where do you get all this? We grow some things ourselves and trade fish for others. You should also think about how to feed your son. Don't worry. I already am. Tell me. Amanda paused, not knowing how to address the man. She hadn't thought to ask his name yesterday. Jose, the man replied. Tell me, Jose, are there any artists in your village? Well, it might be a bit grand to call them that. But is there anyone who draws well? Yes, there is one. He lives like a hermit. Sometimes he appears, sometimes he disappears. God knows where he goes all this time. Introduce me to him. If he hasn't disappeared again, I'll take you to him. You have no idea how much you're helping me. And they headed to the hut of the mysterious artist, who she thought could help her start a new life. But when she entered the hut and saw him, she was speechless. It was him. Amanda suddenly found herself in the past, her life rewinding 10 years. There it was, the cherished diploma from the pedagogical university. She, young and ambitious, was making grand plans and dreaming of fulfilling herself in her profession. No, I won't work in an ordinary school. At least a gymnasium. Preferably one with an advanced French program, she told everyone. And she achieved it. She got a job at one of the most prestigious schools, where she was assigned to the senior classes. Teaching came easily. The students loved the young and attractive teacher and eagerly awaited her classes. What more do high school students need, with their young blood boiling and hormones raging? She excited their imaginations with the wildest fantasies. Amanda diligently taught them grammar and conversational French, constantly giving them challenging topics. I suggest we talk about environmental problems and their solutions. What do you think about that? We think it's time to study the French kiss, not solve environmental problems, the high school students replied to her question. At first, she blushed and didn't know what to say. But gradually, they got used to her, and she learned to steer the topic in the right direction. But one day, something still unsettled her. It was a regular lesson where they were going over a new topic. Amanda noticed that Guillermo, who was sitting at the back, was busy with something. He was so engrossed that he didn't notice her approach from behind. "What are you doing, Guillermo?" She pointed to the sheet of paper in his hands. "Nothing, Sonora," he replied, embarrassed. "And this nothing completely distracts you from the lesson. Show me what you have," and she tried to snatch the paper from his hands, but he didn't let her. "Well, I didn't know you were so bold," the young teacher said in surprise. "He's drawing your portrait," someone shouted from the class. "A portrait?" Amanda said in bewilderment. Guillermo placed the unfinished pencil drawing on the table, which clearly showed her facial features. "You'll stay after class today," she said seriously and continued the lesson. "You did a pretty good job. Did you study somewhere?" Amanda asked when they were left alone. "Yes, at an art school." "And who do you draw?" "Everyone, classmates, teachers, passers-by. My hand just reaches for a pencil whenever I see an interesting face," the young man said enthusiastically. "I also draw a little, but not as well as you do," Amanda decided to boast a bit. And she succeeded. The young man's eyes suddenly lit up. "Really? Can you show me your works?" At that moment, Amanda regretted what she had said. But she didn't want to back down in front of the student. "Yes, of course, at some point. And let's agree that from now on, you will focus on French during my lessons," she said in a businesslike manner. "All right," Guillermo said submissively. Amanda looked at him attentively. He was sitting at the table, looking at her with such a meek gaze that she felt uneasy about her tone. She felt sorry for him. He must be very sensitive, this boy, she thought at that moment. 10th grade, make sure everyone is here. All seats in the bus should be taken. Amanda started counting the children. She kept referring to the list, marking those who were present. "Everyone should be here," one of the kids said. "Wait, where's Guillermo?" she said suddenly. "He's always late. An artistic personality." "Yes, but we're already late for the excursion. He'll be here in a couple of minutes." After these words, a breathless Guillermo was already jumping onto the bus step. His shoulder-length hair was tousled, and he looked as if he had just emerged from a crowd. "See? We told you." "Sorry," Guillermo said, looking at Amanda. And at that moment, there was a certain sparkle in his eyes that made her feel uncomfortable. Mentally, she admitted to herself that she was glad to see him. The excursion was to one of the local museums, where there was an exhibition of French Renaissance culture. The children listened attentively to the curator. Amanda had managed to instill in them a love for France, so they showed genuine interest in what was being told to them. And only two people couldn't understand what the exhibition was about. It was Amanda and Guillermo. They walked a little behind the rest. Amanda couldn't stop thinking about that strange sparkle in Guillermo's eyes. And he was happy that he finally had the opportunity to be near his teacher in an informal setting, just like a few weeks ago. They walked silently but did not stray from each other's side. "The boy seems to be in love. But I can't allow myself to do something so crazy. How can I avoid hurting his feelings?" Amanda pondered. Two young and pretty girls were walking along the shoreline of Aswanda Beach, where it was always crowded. They wore bright sarongs and wide-brimmed sun hats. It seemed they intended to swim and relax on the white sand, just like most of the vacationers. "Lucia, you don't understand, he's in love. It's surely his first youthful infatuation." Amanda was very excited as she spoke to her friend. "Oh, come on. Why get so worked up about it? It's just a crush. It passes quickly. Today he's in love, tomorrow he's found someone else. Don't worry about it." Lucia tried to change the subject as she was getting quite tired of it. "No, you don't understand," Amanda persisted. But Lucia wasn't listening anymore. She was flirting with a young man who had come over to her, a guy playing beach volleyball with his friends. She was very attractive, tan skin, thick black hair, a firm young body that caught the attention of men. "Amanda, we've been invited to join their team." "They're short on people," Lucia suddenly interrupted her friend's monologue. "What team? Isn't this why we came here?" To relax and have fun, Lucia kept her eyes on the young man. "Yes, you're right." Amanda suddenly cheered up and joined in the conversation with the young man. They spent time in a lively company, but by the end of the day, Amanda realized with horror that she was looking for Guillermo's traits in these young men. And she couldn't find them. Yes, she was in love with him. She finally admitted it to herself. Two people sat on the warm white sands of a deserted beach, engaged in a casual conversation. "Amanda, I'm so happy we're together again. I couldn't wait for this moment. The time since our last meeting felt like an eternity," Guillermo said. He looked at her with loving eyes and couldn't get enough of her. "But you see me at school every day," Amanda replied tenderly. "You know it's not the same. It's very hard for me to overcome the barrier between us. But I can't help it. My feelings are stronger than me." Amanda looked at Guillermo lovingly, and at that moment their lips met in a kiss. "No, what am I doing?" She suddenly pulled away from her beloved. "Your age is no barrier for me. Love knows no bounds, right?" Guillermo tried to comfort her, gently stroking her head. "Yes, you're right. Thank you for reminding me of that every time. But it's getting harder for me to restrain my feelings at school. I don't know how much longer I can hold on." "Me too." They sat on the hot sand for a long time, unable to stop talking and gazing at each other. The school principal's office was very spacious. In the center stood an office desk with a computer and a phone. The walls were adorned with numerous certificates and diplomas for achievements in education. The principal herself sat in a high-backed chair. She was an elderly woman who had dedicated her life to children. There was a hesitant knock on the door. "Come in," she said firmly. Amanda entered the office. She knew what the conversation would be about, so she behaved very reservedly. "You probably guess why I invited you to my office," the principal said. Amanda was silent. "Please, have a seat," the principal added. Amanda sat down. "I understand, you are a young and interesting woman. But why a student? Was there no one else around you to start a relationship with?" "I don't understand what you're talking about," she replied quietly. "There's no point in denying the obvious. You're not even ashamed to meet with him during breaks, hiding in corners. Teachers have seen you together in cafes and on the beach several times." "Yes, we are in love," Amanda abruptly interrupted her. "I will not allow any kind of love within my school's walls. You're fired." "We don't need this disgrace," the principal's reply was equally sharp. This was Amanda's last day working at that school. No, she couldn't overcome the obstacles and betrayed her feelings. Was she thinking of Guillermo at that moment? Of course, she was. Amanda hoped that this separation would make him forget everything and cool his feelings. That same day, without saying anything to Guillermo, she left the city, hoping to forget everything and start a new life. Guillermo eventually came to terms with the loss, but his feelings for Amanda remained. He could never forget her. Now Amanda enters a cabin where, after 10 years, she sees her school love Guillermo again. He had noticeably matured over the years. But his hair was still shoulder length. She saw the same spark in his eyes as many years ago. "So, you haven't forgotten," she thought to herself. They stood there for a long time, staring at each other. "I've been looking for you," Guillermo suddenly said. I've been thinking about you all these years too. You left so suddenly back then. You didn't even say goodbye," he continued. "The circumstances forced me to. I had no choice. You could have at least written and explained everything. Then it seemed unnecessary. But now." She didn't finish and rushed into his arms. This was what had been bothering her all these years and wouldn't let her rest. No new life could extinguish the spark that had ignited many years ago for this man. She told him about her life, about her tyrant husband, and about her little son whom she brought with her. Guillermo shared his story about how he became an artist and came here for new ideas for his paintings, and that he had met no one since their separation. "Did you really think I wouldn't find you?" At that moment, Rogelio burst into the hut where the two lovers were. Lucia followed him. "I told you she wasn't as simple as she seemed," said the recent friend. "What do you want here?" Amanda said calmly. "Pretending to be innocent all this time. And you? You barely left home and already found yourself a lover," Rogelio shouted. "You will leave here immediately and never seek me again. I won't even consider it. Where is Jorge? You won't see him again either. I have documented all the beatings. I have a medical report. If this goes to the police, your career will be over. And no court in the world will give a child to a tyrant father. You." Rogelio tried to swing at Amanda, but Guillermo stopped him. "Leave us. Amanda owes you nothing anymore. And who are you, kid? One of her students?" "Yes, her favorite student. And she is my favorite teacher and beloved woman. For 10 years now." Rogelio stood in utter confusion. Next to him, Lucia hissed, "I told you, but you didn't want to believe it." He looked at them closely and realized the guy was telling the truth. Both Amanda and Guillermo were glowing with happiness. He had never seen her like this. Yes, she married him out of love. Rogelio felt it. But it seems this first love was stronger. Saying nothing, he left the hut. "I will file for divorce," Lucia shouted after him. He heard her but did not even turn around. Rogelio realized this was the end. "Beloved, why aren't you ready yet?" "We need to leave in a couple of minutes," Amanda said to Guillermo, who was adding something to a painting. "Just a little more, dear." "Just one more stroke," he replied, not looking up from his work. Amanda approached him from behind and hugged him. "Daddy, Daddy," two little girls, 3 and 4 years old, burst into the room. "Anna, Vittoria, don't disturb your father, or we won't make it in time today." Amanda tried to calm them down, but the little ones ran out immediately. "Now it's done, we can get ready." Guillermo stepped back and took another look at his painting. "I'm glad. Your tuxedo is waiting for you in the room." Amanda was already in her evening dress, waiting for her husband to go to his first exhibition. Finally, Guillermo, Amanda, everyone is already here. The administrator greeted the couple as they entered the exhibition hall. Portraits of various people were neatly hung on the walls, and the numerous audience was examining them with interest. "Guillermo, your moment of glory has arrived," Amanda said. "Our moment of glory," Guillermo corrected her and walked towards the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? I give the floor to the author of today's exhibition, Guillermo." The voice echoed through the microphone. All the guests turned their gaze towards him. "Dear guests and art lovers, I am happy to welcome you to the opening of my exhibition. This is a very important moment in my life. Finally, I can share with you my creations and the ideas that inspire me. Each work presented here became for me not just a painting on canvas, but a part of myself. In every stroke, in every line, I tried to convey my feelings, thoughts, and dreams. And I hope they will astonish, inspire, and ignite your imagination. I would like to introduce you to my muse, as well as my colleague in the creative workshop and my wife, Sonora Amanda. She is the one who inspired me to take this step and helped me through this journey from beginning to end. I wish you all a pleasant time and such inspiring and fateful encounters. Thank you for being here today." After these words, he looked at Amanda, and the sparkles in their eyes glowed again, just as they did 10 years ago. Though perhaps they never dimmed all this time. Because everyone has a soulmate who completes them. And the main thing is not to lose them, and if you do, to do everything to reunite. Dear viewers, if you enjoyed the story, please support the video by liking it and leaving a comment. Thank you very much.